the Senior Vice President of the Edison Electric Institute. The Edison Electric Institute is an organization based in the United States. We represent all the investor-owned utilities in the United States. We also have about 70 international members. These are electric utilities all over the world that operate in about 90 countries. And one of those countries that they operate in is in Liberia. The Liberia Electricity Corporation is a member of the Edison Electric Institute. As an institute, our mission is to work around the world to bring and help foster the provision of electricity to people around the world. If you combine our U.S. members and our international members, which include the Liberia Electricity Corporation, our members provide electricity to about 4 billion people. And so our focus as an organization is to make sure that utilities around the world are operating in an environment that provides the right regulatory as well as policy and investment environment to build the electricity sectors around the world. Our partnership with the Liberia Electricity Corporation began about 2 years ago. And the focus of that partnership is to work with the LEC as well as other stakeholders in Liberia to foster the closing of any gaps we see between how you operate the utility, how you make sure you have the right access to the resources in terms of generation, the infrastructure, transmission, as well as distribution. So I think this is important. This is an important time for Liberia in terms of the electricity system. And Mr. Minister, if you permit me, I will just add a little personal note. As some of you may know, I was born in Liberia. I went to Ricks Institute as well as the B.W. Harris School, studied at the University of Liberia and at the Cutting University College before I spent about 25 years working in the electricity sector worldwide. So for me, as a native of Liberia, electricity has been something I've been around for most of my life, because my father used to work at the Liberia Electricity Corporation in the 70s and 80s. By the time it was actually called the Public Utility Authority, as you well know, Mr. Minister. So electricity is very important, and I think the goal here for us is to really bring and share the best practices from around the world with our colleagues at the LEC. We've been here now for about a week, and almost 2 weeks actually. We've had meetings not just with the LEC, but we've had meetings with other stakeholders, including representatives from the Liberian Electricity Regulatory Commission, folks from the Ministry of Land, Mines and Energy. We've met with schools. We actually had a session with students from the 7 schools in Monrovia, including outside of Monrovia as well, BWI, Don Bosco, and some of the other technical vocational schools in the country. And what was important, and we've said this previously, is that that particular session with the students was perhaps one of the most inspiring for us, and my colleagues I will introduce them soon, and each of them will say a few words. But the meeting with the students was very important because what we believe as an industry worldwide is that human energy is the foundation for building an electricity sector. And what we learned talking to those young students, their bright minds, very curious. There was a young lady from Don Bosco that I spoke to who had so much passion for electricity. So with the human energy, the potential that is there, we believe that the foundation for building a strong electricity sector in Liberia is there. Prior to coming, one of the discussions we have looked at is to look at the progress, Mr. Minister, that Liberia has made. As you all know, the LEC today is run by almost only Liberians. Compared to 10 years ago, the LEC had been run by different foreign operators who did their best as they could. But today, based on what we have seen and based on the observation, Liberians should be proud of the progress that has been made. Today, there is something called non-technical losses, which for all intents and purposes means how do you reduce power theft in the country. And the non-technical losses of the LEC today has reduced by almost 20%, which is a big number compared to the rest of the world. And so when we look at the progress that has been made here, Mr. Minister, by the government, by the LEC, and by others, the donors and others, there's much to be proud of. But there's still much to do. because to be very honest, as we see the country, we know that power theft is still a big issue. We know that the infrastructure still needs to be built. And so we've had discussions this week with representatives from the LDC, technical discussions, policy discussions. We've also had meetings with the board to exchange ideas. And so we hope that the dialogue and the relationship with the Liberian Electricity Corporation through the Edison Electric Institute and of course with the government and others is to build the human capacity, to build the human energy and leverage that. And on the issue of power theft, one thing I said on the radio station, I was fortunate to visit Prime Radio yesterday and also OK Radio. And one of the key messages we tried to convey, that power theft is bad. When you steal power, you actually affect the entire country. So we as a people, as a community, as a consumer of electricity, needs to support the government, support the LEC, because every kilowatt hour that is stolen from the LEC actually affects the government's long-term vision for building the country. It also affects the LEC's ability to do its job. So we as a community, we were also fortunate to visit the LEC Anti-Theft Task Force that is run by Mrs. Mary Bro. And one of the things that I said when I was there was that every time someone steals power, that person is making it difficult for a mother to get the treatment at the JFK. It's making it difficult for a student to get education because that means there's less power to give them. So with that, I'm going to now introduce my two colleagues, and they will each come and say a few words, and we'll be happy to take questions. So first, let me introduce both of them, and they will come up. First is Mr. David Owens. He's the president and founder of a company called Division. And David was also the one who was asked by the U.S. government after the hurricane in Puerto Rico to rebuild the system in Puerto Rico. So we'll invite David, and after David, my next colleague joining us from Switzerland is Mr. Marco Montefiore. We invited Marco to be part of this delegation, not because only of the book he's written on energy citizenship, which he will talk about, but because, as we know, Mr. Minister, one of the big things we need in Liberia, in the electricity sector and many other sectors, is investment. Mr. Montefiore is an investor who works with companies around the world. So after David gives his brief remarks and his experience in Puerto Rico, we'll invite Marco to say a few words, and then we'll be happy to take questions from the media. So David, let's over to you.